So as to what happened in the courtroom today, Pat O'Connor, coroner, gave his verdict, and it took him about 2 seconds to give his verdict. He didn't say anything about what happened to Sally. He didn't say anything about the admission and sending her home from ICU. He didn't say anything about the whole multitude of damning facts and evidence that we heard about the way she was mistreated by Mayo University Hospital. He said nothing about that. All he did say before he gave his verdict, he spoke a lot about the exemplary character of the solicitors on both sides. He was very careful to commend Callan Tansey solicitors, to commend Johan Verbruggen. He did that on more than one occasion. He commended the big pile of paper that was given to him. He commended the submissions. He said he'd never seen anything like it. And then, of course, the other important part was the long time he spent talking about the family and how wonderful they were. And it's very sad this afternoon, because what's happening is families are being deceived, and we've seen it. And what Pat O'Connor is doing is, while he dispenses with justice on one hand, while he gives evildoers a clear slate, while he gives the hospital a rope now to continue doing what they're doing,
yes, very serious,
while he allows them to carry on in what they're doing, he tries to cover it up with soft words to the families. And that's what happened here today, and we just encourage you not to be deceived by those words that you'll hear, I'm sure, in the media. What happened here today is criminal, and it's shocking, absolutely shocking. He gave his verdict that Sally Maaz died of natural causes. That was his verdict. And what that means simply is that all the actions of the hospital did not contribute to her death. The withdrawing of her medication that she'd been on since she was a baby, that treated her heart condition, the sending her home from the ICU, something unheard of, something every medical professional knows never happens. You don't leave an ICU unless you die or unless you go somewhere else in the hospital. That didn't contribute to her death. The giving her of a powerful drug that caused her to choke and vomit, an allergic reaction, that didn't contribute to her death. And putting her on palliative care, pumping her with drugs, with fentanyl, with midazolam,
without consulting the family,
without the consent or the knowledge even of the family. It revealed that the family did not know she was on palliative care, but none of that contributed to her death. The decision by the staff of Mayo University Hospital on her second admission that she would not be escalated beyond ward care, that she wouldn't be brought to the ICU. It was asked in the inquest, was the family made aware of the decision that she was not for resuscitation? And as usual, there was a whole cloud of obfuscation and uncertainty and refusal to answer questions.
But the fact is that they weren't asked, and that's okay. This was an absolute cover-up here today, and certainly not an inquest. And it's wrong that Pat O'Connor is being paid by the government, propping up this government, propping up the HSE, propping up all their wicked doings. When the citizens of this country are terrified going to the hospital, they're left in the dark, they're afraid to make a call to the Mayo University Hospital, we're terrified, the nurses, the staff are all gagged in there, they can do what they want, they can come in here to the inquest, they can contradict each other, they can say it was 84, no it was 87, you did, no you didn't, they can say what they want, and Pat O'Connor is propping them up. This was not an inquest, there were no facts established, we are none the wiser, and this is absolutely disgraceful. This is just disgraceful.
And it's important to realise and to know that Pat O'Connor is paid by the government. He's on a salary from your pocket, the taxpayer. Yeah. And much like even as we see with Tony Holan, we see the disdain with which the government holds its people, the shameless way in which they act. And we think back even to Jemima Burke, who raised with Tony Holan the disgraceful criminal activities of Mayo University Hospital, and how holy Tony was, and how wonderful, and how he was worshipped, and how he was lifted up. But we see this week that he's just a scoundrel.
We do indeed.
Tony Holan is just a scoundrel.
Yes.
That's what he is.
The truth will come out.
And I would say today that Pat O'Connor is a scoundrel.
Absolutely, yes.
And people watching this, that's what you're thinking, that's what you believe. And that's what I believe, and that's what I'll say now. On the record, Pat, you're a scoundrel, and you'll stand before God for your wicked deeds today.
And it is up to the people of Mayo, of this country, to stand up for their beliefs, stand up for your family, stand up for your loved ones. That's our message to you today, because this is total corruption. And be careful of the solicitor you employ. I would beg of you, be careful of the solicitor you employ.
It was determined as in the first day that she was there that she would not be escalated beyond ward care, which is a professional or a nice way of saying that we're not going to treat you for what you have. If you develop serious illness, you're going to be left in your bed and you're going to die. But that's okay.
And as we have stated many times before, on her first night there, as far as I can remember from my notes, the first interview with the Maaz family, she was put into the COVID ward. She was given a drug that caused her Palexol, that caused her to choke, to vomit. She was on her own. She was crying for help. She was calling her family and asking why was she in the COVID ward when she tested negative. She was begging for help, but that's okay. She was taken off her medication that she had been on for 17 years, Rampril, treating her heart condition. She was under Dr. Oslislock in Crumlin Hospital, who's a cardiologist in Dublin, and the Mayo University Hospital told the Maaz family that had been approved. Her being taken off the Rampril was approved by Crumlin. However, that was discovered later when poor Sally had died, that they didn't even know she was in hospital, but that's okay. That's what we must deduct from Pat O'Connor's decision here today. That's okay. That's fine.
So it's a very solemn day, a very sad day, and all we would say is that there are many, many people who have died across County Mayo and across Ireland, and they should be alive.
Yes.
They went into Mayo University Hospital with other conditions, often very mild conditions, and they never came out.
Yes.
And what we have had the experience of, I suppose, over the last 2 years here at this inquest is at least to hear some of what went on.
Yes.
We heard damning reports from this inquest.
Yes, we heard contradictions in here.
We heard
contradictions from the hospital staff themselves, one contradicting the other, Professor O'Malley contradicting the nurses and vice versa, but that's okay.
That's okay.
That's okay. We have to accept that now.
So the facts are before us today, they're before you, and we would encourage people now to reflect on the state in which our country is in.
Yes.
Pat O'Connor, Coroner for the Mayo District, can listen to all this evidence, can listen to all these things that we've just said, and sit down in his chair this morning and say that Sally Maaz died of natural causes.
Yes.
No one in County Mayo believes that.
Yes.
No one in Ireland believes that. The HSE don't believe it. Johan Verbruggen, Tansey most certainly don't believe it. But Johan Verbruggen drove off today. He fled out of the court. Mr. O'Connor has gone back to his office and they've covered it up, or so they think.
Sally was heavily sedated. She was heavily sedated. When her parents eventually were allowed to come and see her, she couldn't keep her eyes open. She couldn't utter 2 words to them. She was heavily sedated, as most patients are who are taken into Mayo Hospital, and the families are told they're COVID patients. They're heavily sedated unto death. But that's okay. That's fine. We just need to accept that now. We need to accept now that the staff at Mayo University Hospital are gagged, that they can contradict each other, that they can take a young girl who is seriously ill and send her home where she is in deep pain and deteriorates rapidly for 2-3 weeks, and she can be brought back again, and there's no question about it, no asking why she was sent home. When we brought this up here today, Pat O'Connor had us taken out of the courtroom, and he himself is fleeing out the back door, and I believe that this solicitor, Johan Verbruggen, has just deceived the Maaz family. He has deceived the Maaz family. Johan Verbruggen of Callan-Tansey Solicitors has deceived the Maaz family. Yes, I will say it again and again and again. Johan, you called me 2 years ago, and no doubt you will be listening to this, Johan, and you told me you didn't think it was murder. You weren't really sure. I have it on record. And you told me, Johan, that you would leave no stone unturned. In this case, you would leave no stone unturned. I have sat in there for the past 2 years, time and time again, and you haven't opened your mouth. You've been like a little lamb, bowing down in obeisance before Pat O'Connor, before the RDJ Glen Solicitors for the Mayo University Hospital, and you've wrapped it up. It's all in agreement. And Johan, you know the truth, Johan, today. You have gone with your bag of money and you have deceived the Maaz family.
And many more. Like back in May of 2020, just after Sally died, the family gave the story to Jemima Burke. It was published in part on the front of the Connacht Telegraph. And they were absolutely clear about one thing. The Maaz family were absolutely clear to my sister and to the paper that they did not believe their daughter died of COVID. They didn't believe that. And they were clear about that. Now, the Irish Times and the Irish Independent ran stories on her death, and they said on those papers that Sally had died of COVID. And the family were very, very distressed about that. My sister called the managing director of the Irish Times. My mother Martina was in contact with other representatives of the paper, and they had to take it off the internet. They had to take down that article that said that Sally died of COVID. Now, the first day of this inquest in February, earlier this year, Pat O'Connor, the coroner, looked down to Johan Verbruggen of Callan-Tansey Solicitors and said, "We agree that she died of COVID."
We've all agreed.
He said, "We've all agreed, haven't we?" Looking around to HSE and Callan-Tansey, that she died of COVID. And Johan nodded his head and said yes.
Yes, and
Now,
I must say I
yeah.
was extremely, I was just very, very amazed. I didn't know what had happened because I couldn't understand what had happened to Abdullah. He was adamant and he was sure 100% she did not die of COVID. That's Sally's father, which of course I have no doubt. Of course she did not die of COVID. She was treated in a despicable way by Mayo University Hospital. She was sent out of the ICU, which is unheard of, sent home extremely ill, and Abdullah was very, very stressed when we met him. He said she was given tablets, whereas she needed an intravenous antibiotic. She was given tablets, and he knew, of course, this was disaster for his daughter. And of course, when she was taken back some weeks later, she was put straight away almost on palliative care and treated in a despicable manner, left to die by Mayo University Hospital. We have sat here and we have been taken out because we've asked questions. That is our crime today. This is a real slap in the face for the hundreds and thousands of people across this country who have buried their loved ones and have serious questions that are not being answered. We have no place to go now for answers. We have come here today and there is absolutely no truth in this investigation. Sally died of natural causes. The dogs on the street know she didn't. And this is just absolute criminal. It's absolute criminal what has happened here today.
Also present here today at the inquest was Detective Sergeant Michael Doherty. You'll remember, of course, that Michael Doherty is instrumental through all of this, as are the Gardaí, who refused to investigate the circumstances of Sally's death when people came and reported to the Gardaí. And it's important to clarify that point. There was no investigation. There's been other reports this week to the contrary. It's not true. There was no Garda investigation. Michael Doherty refused to open a proper investigation, and he sat here in the inquest, we know, as we've already reported, and gave a totally misleading account, misleading evidence to the court as to his interactions with Martina and Jemima Burke.
So while our towns and our villages are awash with drink, with drugs, with stressed towns, young people with suicide, this place today is full of guards to remove hard-working citizens of this country who ask a simple question. Why was the first week when Sally was admitted to Mayo University Hospital, taken out from ICU, seriously ill and sent home, why was this not mentioned, Johan Verbruggen? Why was this not mentioned, Pat O'Connor? Why was this not mentioned? Because it's a cover-up, it's a collusion, and the family are being deceived by Johan Verbruggen. And this is very, very serious. It's very serious what's happening.
And we would finally say just a word of warning. Many families have been represented by Canon Tansey solicitors.
Yes, indeed.
And we listened with great interest over the past 2 years, especially to Tommy Moran on Midwest Radio, who repeatedly had Canon Tansey and still does have Canon Tansey on his show, and he would often say, if you have any problems, the representatives from the firm would say, if you have any issue with the hospital, if you're not sure about how your loved one died, if you have suspicions, come to us. We'll leave no stone unturned. We'll take your case. And we listened to that with interest, and all our beliefs now have been totally confirmed this evening.
And we're sorry to have to say that. We're sorry, but it is our duty to warn the people of Mayo and of our country, just be careful of who you get to represent you, because certainly, I believe with all my heart, this family were totally deceived by Johan Verbruggen today. Yes, I will say it a million times, and Johan, you know you deceived the Maaz family, 100%.
From the very beginning, the politicians have been aware of what's happening. We went to politicians all across the country, we went to politicians in County Mayo, and they're aware, they know what's happening. The government politicians know, and they were silent. They had nothing to say. To this day, the government politicians have said nothing in County Mayo about the gagging of the staff, not to mention the criminal behaviour that's been taking place in this inquest. But of course, we also have the so-called opposition. We have Michael Kilcoyne in Castlebar, who steadfastly refuses to this day to ask the HSE why they're gagging their staff. And it's sad now, we have the result of it, a total criminal whitewash here in Swinford, a family with no answers, and a total cover-up of the truth. But Michael now still refuses to ask why the staff are gagged. And of course we have our Sinn Féin TD, Rose Conway Walsh, who is also aware of everything that has been happening and has been very consistent throughout the past 2 years. We had her commending the nursing homes back when, at the height of the killing and the slaughter, when elderly people were going to their deaths. She said she has full confidence in the nursing homes. Of course she did. And throughout the saga with the hospital, she has always stood by the hospital. She has refused to speak the truth about what's happening here, and you need to think carefully about that and not be deceived like this family has been here today by a bunch of solicitors. Don't be deceived by fair words from Sinn Féin. It doesn't mean a thing.